Hello, neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counselor and therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counselor and therapist. I was born in Maria, Mississippi, and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in 2021. I ran for governor of Mississippi in 2019. I'm Robert J. Ray, the man with all of the answers, every Monday at 4 p.m. Watch me on WeBelieve.global. Hello, neighbors. Welcome to the Robert J. Ray Show, the man with all the answers. This is going to be a really big shoe, as Ed Sullivan used to say today, because we're going to be talking about Edgar Ray Killen and the man who wrote the book, Larry Ellis. And when you learn about this, you will understand why Mississippi is kind of in the shape it's in today, because of this one man and the power that he had and all of the influence he had on all of the Caucasians here in Mississippi. First, I want to talk about Larry Ellis, the one who wrote the book, and how I got tied up in the book. I bought the rights to the book. Hey, will you put up 1A for me, producer? Okay, now this is Larry Ellis. Now he was the one who wrote this book. He was a kind, gentle, humble man, and he wanted me to have the rights to the book. This is the way that this happened, and I'm gonna have to read the foreword for you. There'll be a lot of reading today, so if you don't like people reading to you, you have to cut them off. But you'll miss a whole lot of things here. Okay, this is what the foreword say. The first encounter I had with Larry Ellis, he called me one morning in 2014, and he wanted to talk to me about a book he had written about Edgar Ray Killen. He shared that he had found my name as president of the Mississippi Writers Guild. We talked, and he convinced me that he indeed had a manuscript of the life of Edgar Ray Killen, who was known as King of the Ku Klux Klan. I gave him my word that I would help him if I could. He sent me the manuscript, and I began to read it, and I was excited about the communication between Larry and Edgar. One, a hard fire and brimstone racist Christian preacher, and the other, a soft, simple Christian who didn't hate anyone, even people who had treated him so cruel while he was in Parchment prison. It was a kind of book that I could not put down. The prison system had caused Larry to become very ill after so many years of eating the food they served. He told me he probably had only a few months to live. I emailed the manuscript to some of my writer friends to see if they wanted to invest in getting Larry's book into print. But even though I received positive feedback, no one wanted to invest in the book about Edgar Ray Killen because they did not know what reaction it was going to have on the people of Mississippi who are named in the book. And he does name a lot of people in this book. So Larry was very soft-spoken, but very persuasive. So I, a black man, committed to buy the rights to Edgar Ray Killen. And Edgar Ray Killen's life story was the only pictures of Edgar Ray, of his family on the planet. I'm a black man. I got the only pictures of Edgar Ray and his family. I'm going to show you some of them before we get finished here. And during the months I was trying to get the manuscript to a publisher, Larry's cancer was progressing. I was really trying to get the book published before Larry died. The feedback I received from some publishers was the book was too controversial. I would not give Edgar Ray Killen a platform to spew his hatred and racism. Larry and I agreed that the genuine truth about Edgar Ray Killen, whom everyone in Mississippi knew as the king of the KKK, had to get it out. I promised Larry I would see to his book getting published if I had to pay out of my own pocket. In November 2014, I met with Larry and his family at the Waffle House in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and paid him the money for all the rights to the Edgar Ray Killen story. He was happy and animated. His father and mother and his other family members treated me warmly and neighborly. I looked them all in the eye and I asked them, were they comfortable with me buying the rights to Larry's book? and they all agreed that Larry wanted me to have it because he did not trust any white people to follow through with getting Edgar Ray's Killen story to the public. I called about a month later to tell Larry that we were getting close to publishing his book. That's when his son Jeremy informed me that Larry had died 2 weeks before Christmas. I was sad and a little piece of me died with Larry. I thought to myself, what a waste of talent. But it wasn't the cancer that killed Larry. It was all those years in the Mississippi prison system that killed Larry. And for what? Writing a few bad checks to get drugs. That's who the person was that wrote this book. And I'm going to be sharing some of the questions that he asked Edgar Ray. And this guy, Edgar Ray, he was so powerful and had so much clout until he had Larry Ellis move down there where his cell was, in the tomb, so to speak. And the warden moved him down there because he told the warden that he wanted Larry Ellis to write a story because he had already read a book that Larry had written. And sure enough, they moved Larry down there. And put up 1B, Mr. Producer. That was my contract with Larry. When I went down there and met with his family, we had to sign, and so he signed all the rights over to me from that book. Now, when you talk about Larry and Edgar Ray, this was like an exchange. It was just, I think it was a television show, The Odd Couple. This is what you could say that this story was about. The odd couple. One raises, the other one a loving of the neighbor individual. And why this book is so phenomenal is that I was in Meridian during this time when they was plotting to kill the 3 civil rights workers. And that's what Edgar Ray got convicted for about 41 years later. Although he was the head and the brains in getting Michael and James and Goodman victimized that particular Sunday night. And I was supposed to be with them that particular night, but my uncle came over, Uncle Fuller, he ran the cab stand, and I was a dispatcher. And he came by my house early that Sunday morning and said he needed me to dispatch that Sunday morning because the lady that used to come in wouldn't be able to come in. That was the only thing that kept me from going with them that particular day. So when they left, Goodman joined them instead of me. And when they left, I felt an uneasy feeling about it, but I said, well, it can't be too bad because they're just going down to view the church that that the whites had burned down. And after that, I went back to dispatching, and I didn't really think too much of it until they didn't get back at sundown, because I had always told them to always get back before sundown. That was a mainstay of mine when I lived in the country. I could go places during the daytime, but my grandmother and grandfather, they wanted me back home by sundown because we had to do the feeding of the animals and the chores to get ready for the next day starting out. So I always told Michael and James when they took off on trips, and I would know where they was going because I was raised up in Kemper County, and I had been all over Neshoba County, the different churches, and up in Winston County. And I would always tell them the best way to go and who to see when they got there. So this particular day, I didn't say anything, but just, I'll see you when you get back, because if they was going to the church, then I knew that they would be seeing people down there. And after they saw the church was burned up and they may have had some services outside, then they would be heading back. But that didn't happen. Put up 2A for me, producer. This was Edgar Ray, when he first married his first wife, young-looking man. This is what it said. It said, this is the wedding photograph of Edgar Ray Killen to his first wife, Mrs. Lucille Killen, on the day of their ceremony. Mrs. Lucille Killen died from complications associated with illness of diabetes. They had a wonderful marriage, and she stood by his side all the while and was totally supportive of anything that he did. And just like anybody's wife. So she was just a Ku Klux Klanman's man's wife, and she had to just follow whatever his lead was. So that was the first one. Now, put up 2B for me, Mr. Producer. This was Edgar Ray when he aged. He'd gotten him to be an 80. He was in about 70 or 80 years old. And this one says, Edgar Ray Killen and Betty Jo, whom he called Baby Doll, Killen, in the fall of 1997. That's when they got married. So this was his wife when he was convicted and sent to Parchment. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share some things with you about Edgar Ray, and I'm going to read some excerpts of him and the exchange that he had with Larry Ellis. And this is mostly the best part about the book is the way that Larry Ellis questioned him and needled him and made him confess and tell the truth about certain things in the book. And you'll see when I read excerpts from the book what a diabolical individual this was, but yet he was a preacher that went all over. He had about 10 churches that he preached in all over Neshoba County and Winston County and different counties, and but yet he was this demonic man that would kill black people and just wouldn't think anything about it. But this is what he wrote. Put the 2C up there for me, producer. Okay, Edgar said, this is what he wrote to Larry Ellis and about it. He said, I, Edgar Ray Killen, do swear that the written responses, notes, and information I have provided Larry Ellis and authorized him to use are true and correct to the best of my knowledge and memory, under penalty of perjury. If false, he may write my story. That's what he gave Larry Ellis permission to do. Now, this is the first excerpt I'm gonna read. When Larry Ellis got down there to Edgar Ray Killen's cell, this is what he told him when he decided he was going to write the book. He told him, he said, son, I give you my story. It is called Getting the Last Word In, but we changed that. So he didn't really get the last word in after all, but that's what he wanted to call it. He said, what I've got to say will shock all of them, especially the ones living. I came up with the title mainly because I'm 84 years old, with a lot still to say, and a book will allow me to get the last say to the public and the world before it's too late. His voice had changed to despondence and desperation. All you had to do is tell my story like you told the Hill. And he was talking about the first book that Edgar Ray had written about a guy. I know you're good at writing, and I like where you're coming from. You could get rich off a book about me. I have a big fan club and lots of supporters. Even those who oppose me would buy the book just to keep up with me. I know you've heard a lot about millions of people have. I'm Ray Killen, Edgar Ray Killen. Many call me the last king of the Klan. You could have a New York Times bestseller if you wrote my story. I'm the only one left who is still living and the only one who knows the whole truth. And I'll tell you about it. Now, this is the beginning of what it was like to be living in Mississippi in the 1960s. And this is going to really blow your mind, the way that he did a lot of these things. Now, if you would like to book a counseling session, please visit theorganism.com. All of my books can be purchased on Amazon Books. So we'll be right back after a little break, and I will be sharing some more about you from Larry Ellis and about Edgar Ray Killen. And it was just amazing the kind of life that this man led while he was down here in Mississippi. And I have a few more clips to show you, and you're going to be blown away at a couple of them, because when I saw it, I couldn't believe that these individuals in this state, in this country, were so poor to someone like Edgar Ray Killen. We'll be right back. The Black American race is the only race in the USA who do not have connate rational minds to pass down to their offspring, which means the black baby boys being born today will not have their precious gem to compete with all the other races for their piece of the American dream. Why is it that other races can enter the USA with little or nothing and in a few years have more than the black race? The reason: no rational mind. You have to have a rational mind to operate a business and make it pay. The Black and White Race Rationale by Robert J. Ray. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back, people. I was saying something about Edgar Ray and Larry Ellis and how they got tied up together. Now, this book was so controversial until once Larry Ellis finally got it out of the prison system, in which he had it had been flushed down the commode 2 or 3 times. They would come in and do a jail search, and they would get all of his paper, and they would flush it down the commode, and he would have to start over again. He wrote this whole manuscript in a month's time, and then they had took it and destroyed it a couple of times before he could get it. He slipped it out of the prison, piecemeal sometime, and to get this out here. And he did it. And then before he could publish it, the FBI stepped in, came to his house and said, "Hey, we want to see that manuscript." Can you imagine you writing a book and the FBI come and ask you, say, "Hey, we got to see that manuscript before you try to publish it"? And he did that. Put that up to D up on the screen for me. That's it. At the top of it, it say the United States Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. And it says the item listed below were received from Larry Ellis. And one thing was he was original letter from Edgar Killen to Mrs. Dot Parker to give him permission to get the pictures that I have. And copies of the question and answers by Larry Ellis, answered by Edgar Ray Killen. That's what it was. All of the things he wrote, the book that he was holding up in his hand, all that handwritten, they had to see all of those questions and answers that Edgar Ray had given to Larry Ellis. And third, a copy of the manuscript titled "Getting the Last Word In" by Edgar Ray Killen. This was can you imagine having to show the FBI what you've written and what the questions you've answered, Edgar Ray? Because they had been studying Edgar Ray for a long time, all of these years. And people wonder why they didn't arrest him back there in '64, and when they got the other individuals and prosecuted them for the civil rights workers. Now I'm going to tell you a little something about that Sunday. Edgar Ray was out at one of the restaurants there that's still operating there in Meridian. And they were out there plotting then what they were going to do to Goatee and James Chaney. And this was during the morning, afternoon, and in the morning around lunchtime, they was out there, and they was talking about it then, what they were gonna do to him, and some of his leg men, some of his underlings was saying, well, what do you want us to do to him? You know, yeah, and he said, well, you teach him a lesson. Yeah, that's what we here for. What he was talking about is that's what we declaring here for the white people, and we're gonna teach the Jew and the little black boy a lesson. So after they left there, they went over to a trailer park that's still here today, still there in Marine today, and they discussed it further of what they wanted to do to them. So they were saying they were going to first arrest them, and then they were going to keep them in there until it got dark, and then they were going to release them, and they were going to have the sheriff deputy parked on the highway, and that would be Highway 19, highway still there. And then he was going to get behind them, and they were going to stop them, and then they were going to take them and discipline and beat them or whatever they was. I don't know if it got out of hand or what, but what they did, they took them out and they murdered them. And these guys that were with them, they found out that they hated black people, and they would kill a black person at the drop of a hat. And these are the kind of people that Edgar Ray Killen had working under him, and he was influencing them to do these things. And when they didn't show up back at sundown, after we found out they was in their jail, we didn't know what was going to happen. All of the people at COFO, Congress for Racial Equality, and their building was upstairs over the taxi stand where I was a dispatcher, so they were started coming back and forth to me, wondering what had happened. Are they coming back? Are they on the way back? You know, because I was on the phone in between dispatching cab, trying to find out whatever I could. Had anyone heard anything about the 3 civil rights workers? But no one had heard anything. But after it got dark, and they said that they had released them, and then an hour or so went by, then my heart kind of dropped in because I knew that something bad had happened. Because it don't take from Philadelphia to Meridian, the longest it would take if you was driving 45 and 50 would be 40 minutes at the most. And now it had been an hour or two, and they hadn't showed then. So I knew what had happened at that point in time. Okay, let me read a little bit about what Ray said. Larry Ellis said he remembered Edgar Ray Killen this way. He said, though I didn't remember Ray Killen, I thought I had once seen him many years ago. I asked him about it. Ray, in the early 70s, a football team had a playoff game in Jackson. I was 18, maybe 20 then. I believe you said the prayer before the game and introduced Senator Eastland. Edgar Ray answered, there was obviously pride in his voice as he responded, you are probably correct, son. Jim and I were closest friends, and I was deeply involved with him in many ways. I preached all over Mississippi and spoke at a lot of political rallies, community organizations about any place where people would gather. I tell you right off about Senator James Eastland. He was the best friend I had, the most honest and true politician from the South in history. There was not anything I would not have done for him. He made miracles happen for me. He was and will always be my number one hero. His next statement was said naturally. A matter of fact, most of these nigger gods hate me. Most all blacks do. That warden and that black bitch doctor helped to get my appeal bond revoked. And they did because the reason that they revoked his appeal, he was riding around in his car and with baby doll and going all over the place when he was supposed to be confined to his home with a bracelet on his leg. But he was just going anywhere like he was still free. And when they saw this, then the people that hated him say, hey, he need to be locked up. He's violating his probation. And that's what happened. They revoked his probation. Some of all of them say, just like the newspaper say, that I am the most hated man alive, worse than Osama bin Laden. One reporter said that I was hated as much as Hitler. Funny though, he killed millions though. I'll admit that most of them were communist Jews. They killed Jesus Christ and they still claim he was a nobody. They are very against all Christianity. This is the exchange that we're going to be going back and forth from Larry to Edgar Ray. Put up 2E for me, Mr. Producer. Now that was our first cover there, and you see down below there that this was had the tombstones of the 3 civil rights workers and had Edgar Ray Killen over there on the side. That was going to be our first cover. But I'm just saying that third person there should have been me. Can you imagine that? Now here it is. I was supposed to go with him, but Goodman just got in town just soon enough to get in the car and go with him, and that caused his demise. Now, just see, look how ironic and astonishing this is. Now, Edgar Ray was sitting out there. He didn't know it, but he was plotting my death also when they was out at the restaurant, because I was going. The only thing that stepped in was divine providence and caused me not to go. I had to dispatch that morning. And I would have been one of those tombstones down there if not for divine providence. But this is the most astonishing part, is that now, here it is, almost 40-something years later, 50 years later, and out of the blue, Larry Ellis called me about the book for Edgar Ray Killen. Isn't that something? And when I left there, when they did say that the civil rights workers was missing, I knew what had happened then. I knew that they had been murdered. Because like I think I told you before, that Sheriff Price, he was the one that had murdered my cousin. He and my Uncle Frank came down from Flint, Michigan during the summer in '59 to have some fun and visit the family. And they went down to Philadelphia to have a little fun. And my cousin was going to get with this black lady that the deputy's friend was sleeping with, a black lady. And he just shot him down in the street, stopped the car, and shot him down in the street. He was with the lady. And that's why we knew, that's why I knew that they was deadly down in Philadelphia. And that same Deputy Sheriff Price who killed my cousin is the same one that was part of the shooting of the 3 civil rights workers. They say that he shot one, either Swarner or Goodman or Cheney. He might have shot all 3 of them. They say they were shot in the chest. You know, it was kind of hard to tell once they got him out from under the dam. But now, he was plotting my demise, and now I had his story, all his family pictures, and all his documents. A black man had that now. I know if he's there talking to Beelzebub, he know that he'll be wanting to come back here. Let me go back and take care of that. I don't want that nigga with my papers and my pictures of my family and baby dolls. I got pictures of baby dolls. Probably the only one that's left. And that's the way. That's the irony of this whole thing. How it came to me. I would have had to. And just being the president of the Mississippi Writers Guild was a phenomenal thing, because you know that prestigious organization in the South probably wouldn't have had a black man as president. But I did become the president of it, and that's how he got in contact with me. A lot of people wonder how I became to be the president of the Mississippi Writers Guild, which was a 103 7 organization and was prestigious. We had writers coming from all over the nation to our conferences every July. So here I was, the president, and I was just sitting there, and here comes Larry Ellis calling me, asking me would I help him print this book, get it in published by Edgar Ray Killen. And I couldn't say no. So this is what this book is about. I'm going to be reading some of the excerpts in this book here, and I hope it enlightens you as to how this state of Mississippi got in the shape it's in today. Mississippi is still being punished there for all of these deaths that white people inflicted on the black race or the Negro race at that time. All of the lynchings that they did, and even and Emmett Till was one of them that he came down from Chicago, and they still upset about that Emmett Till thing. I think they're having something over at the museum over in Jackson about Emmett Till on his 51st anniversary. And the white people think that black people forget about this stuff and these killings and murder. But I'm trying to share with nobody forgets when somebody killed one of their relatives. If you would like to book a counseling session with me, please visit theorganism.com. All of my books can be purchased on Amazon Books. We will be right back after this message. All right. Y'all niggas was born into a faith-only religion. Baptist, Methodist, Holiness, or Catholic. But y'all have one thing in common, believing that faith only will save you. Y'all were taught to believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and y'all bought into it without questioning whether it was genuinely true or not. Just because your parents introduced you into it, but don't blame them so much as the false preachers who preach this false Nicene Council 325 AD doctrine. The Nigger's Holy Bible by Robert J. Ray, available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back, neighbor. Would you put up number 3 for me? Now this people is from Germany. It's from a guy from Germany named Max von Koskow. And he wrote this to Larry Ellis. He said, "Thank you very much for your most welcome letter. It was a pleasure reading it, especially as I was not sure or not Edgar Ray Killen received my letter to him." See, these people over in Germany, they love Edgar Ray Killen. They said, "Well, I want you to give you a short introduction of myself so that you get an impression of the person who's writing you." This guy, he loved Edgar Ray Killen, and they thought Edgar Ray Killen. He said, "Even if I am familiar with Mr. Killen's case, it makes what really moving to me to read your words. It is so terrible, and it makes me really already angry when I have to imagine how Mr. Killen has to live. It is such a shame for our so-called civilized world." And then he goes on to say, "Therefore, I was really glad to read that you are going to write his story of life, or better, you are already doing so. Am I right? And yes, of course, I am interested in reading your work. No doubt. Do you want it to be released by a published company? And if yes, do you already have such publishing house that could be interested in this book? Please send me utmost greeting and respect to Mr. Killen and tell him I'm thinking of him." Now, why would these people over in Germany love Edgar Ray Killen so? I mean, they got him as a hero like over there. And he was killing all of these. ordering the killing of all of these Negroes in the South and in Mississippi. And these people loved him so. What is it about this individual that people were so pulled to? You know, even though he was a preacher and preached, and then how could you, and then you would be preaching about Jesus and loving the neighbor on a Sunday and may go out and hang or murder some black people and some Negroes on a Monday. And all through the book, that's the way he was. It was just like he was a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde through that. So that was just from Germany. Put up number 4 for me. Now this one was called Natchen's whatever that is. They had they had Edgar Ray Killen, the number 3, as a political prisoner. Number CMCF, Unit 3, maximum security, post office by Pearl, Mississippi. They got Pearl, Mississippi all over there in Germany on this pamphlet showing that Edgar Ray Killen is a political prisoner. The bottom says, this German-made pamphlet listed Edgar Ray Killen as an American prisoner of war. As a political prisoner, he was 3rd on the list. Can you, I mean, if it wasn't so irrational, it would be funny. But this is serious stuff. They had Edgar Ray Killen as a hero, so to speak, over in Germany. And they still love Edgar Ray over there for some reason or another. Now I'm going to read you a little more from the excerpts of what Edgar Ray was saying. He said, we got a country full of blacks turning out and pimping young white girls, raping them and getting them pregnant and leaving them high and dry on welfare like they do their own kind. Prisons are overpacked with drug addicts and mentally ill who ought not to be in there. Kids are dying in a war for oil, children go hungry and poorly educated, and old folks go without proper medical coverage and Social Security. The economy is suffering, and it will get worse, much worse, very soon. Guess who is getting even richer yet? The Jews. And they'll strip America until they own it. Damn Jesus killers, unrepentant, thieving, killing liars. This is his philosophy. This is what he was thinking. Now, the thing he said about the white black men going around putting the seed in the white females. Now, we know that all black men can't wait to get their hand on a white woman. This is the way he had people thinking. And this is where a lot of white people are thinking. This is why they don't want to be neighbors today with black people, because they think that black men want their wives and want their daughters and stuff like that. And this is irrational thinking, and this is why the country is so racist like it is today. And not just in Mississippi, but in all of America. Okay, will you put up number 5 for me, producer? Now this is called Unresolved. This is an exhibit, focuses on civil rights era killing. That civil rights killing is when Edgar Ray Killen was heading up the Ku Klux Klan, and he was the king of it. It said that I'm gonna read one paragraph. An interaction exhibit in Mississippi prompt visitors to visit aloud the names of people who were killed in acts of racial violence in the United States during the civil rights era. Incantations in a dark room to honor some 150 men, women, and children whose lives were cut short. And this is mostly about the 50th anniversary of Emmett Till. And tell me this, neighbor. Now you see what Edgar Ray Killen did for the history in Mississippi. But do you know that I took this book over to the Civil Rights Museum, and they rejected it. They refused to put it in their bookstore, and it just knocked me out of control. This man here was the biggest murderer of all of those people you got hanging up in there, the black people, and they refused. They rejected it. Then after rejected, I told them I would sell it to them. That's what I was going to do. I was going to sell them all of the Edgar Ray Killen stuff so that they could have it in the museum. And they just flat out rejected it. And I couldn't understand that. Here was the king of the Ku Klux Klan, the one who was responsible for a lot of those dead people up that names they had in the Civil Rights Museum, and they rejected putting Edgar Ray Killen in there. And I was wondering why. Why would you want the main individual that wreaked so much havoc in Mississippi during the Civil Rights era not want his stuff in the Civil Rights Museum? And I'm still waiting on the answer now. So maybe you people can find out why it's not in there. Okay, I'm going to read you another thing before we go to the next break. He asked, he took a deep breath and he continued. Now back to what I was saying. They've been real bad to me and it's getting a lot worse. The worst one is the black bitch captain. Never knew her before this, and her first words to me were that she hated me. She's a publicly out of the closet lesbian, son. She brags about it. She told me that she'd keep me so loaded with rule violations that I'd never get out of the hole. And I'd lose my phone visits and canteen privilege. She's already wrote me up repeatedly, but my boy Tattoo has beat every one of her write-ups. Yesterday, she told me, she guaranteed me that I would stay back here until I died. And that was the truth, because he did stay back there until he died. That's where he was. She's just the perfect example of a dumb nigger, uneducated, sexually perverted. Yeah, she's a real slimy black. She needs a real full-blooded Aryan to teach her a good lesson about respecting her betters. She probably from right around here also. I could get her out of the picture with one phone call, and believe me when I say I could have her disappear with one little phone call. I got people, one in particular, who would do her in a second. Now this is the guy who they had convicted, and they was trying to say that he didn't have any power, but this is the power that he said he had. And you could not just dismiss it because of what he had done in the past. But this is the way that he was being treated in the prison, because this captain and the people that had to get him his needs met, they was treating him wrong. It wasn't neighborly. Even though he was who he was, the king of the clan, when you're doing your job, you're supposed to do it honestly, justly, and sincerely. And if you're supposed to bring him his food, you're not supposed to let it sit there until it get cold. I've seen cold food in prison. I worked in there 11 years. And once it get cold, you can't hardly eat it. And if you eat it, you're just forcing it down. And that's what they was doing to Edgar Ray. They was really punishing him. When it came time for a shower, they were making sure that the water, all of the hot water would be gone, and he would have to take a cold shower in there. And this is the way that they was doing Edgar Ray in the prison that he was in. Now, would you say that this was wrong, or was he being punished for what he had done to the black race? You could say that, but it wasn't their job to punish him. The punishment had been handed down by the judge and the jury that say that, hey, he would be doing time or life or whatever he got in prison. You are not supposed to be in there keeping him from getting his hot meal, and keeping him from getting his canteen, and keeping him from getting a warm shower. But they would. This is what, because it's mostly blacks that work in the prison system anyway. I guess you people know that. If you didn't know, now you know it. Because too many whites, they're afraid to work in these prisons with all of these, and most of them in there are black criminals who's just waiting for a chance to shank a white person. And most of these are black. And so when he came in there, that was the punishment is kind of in the crime, and he was getting punished by these black people who thought that him being the king of the Ku Klux Klan had victimized so many black people in the past, in which he had him and his crew had done a lot of damage. And let me see if I can read another passage before we go to break. Okay. This is Larry said, "Talk to me, Ray." That's what Larry called him, Mr. Ray. I replied, I surely got the time to listen. I did my best to follow him word for word in the notes I wrote as he talked at events of the past, which had not caused him to be so cruelly incarcerated in the twilight years of his life. He had gotten 40 years of freedom from this 1964 up until 2007, 2008, 2000, when they convicted him. He had been free man all of those years, doing whatever he wanted to do. He said, well, this whole case is being made into a racial issue. Yet 2 or 3 of that was killed with white. White communist Jews registered as such. We knew the ACLU sent them and knowingly sacrificed them to get the publicity and be in favor with the niggers. That sellout president needs to get the public's eye off of the Vietnam War. Boy, oh boy, he tricked all of the U.S. senators, boasted the niggers, with promises of money, equality, but look at them now. Still ignorant, still running cities, still selling and doing drugs, still tricking young white girls by putting their inferior seed in them and making them bastards breed. This is what he was saying. Man, oh man. If you would like to book a counseling session with me, please visit organismchapter4.com. All of my books can be purchased on Amazon Books. We'll be right back. Don't miss it. Senator James Oliver Eastland, he headed up the U.S. Judiciary Department for many years, the highest judiciary committee of the United States of America. He was my guidance, my superior, protector, and mentor. He did show me how the slick communist Jews was coming into Mississippi and corrupting our blacks, who were only a few generations past being ignorant slaves. Slaves whom had been long supported with home, food, and upkeep until a war released them from so-called slavery into poverty, homelessness, and without assistance. We grew up together. Edgar Killen by Larry Ellis. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back, neighbor. We're still talking about Edgar Ray Killen, the king of the Ku Klux Klan. This guy had so much power and clout with Senator Eastland, and that he could go up in the Pentagon. Why would you have a Ku Klux Klanman up at the Pentagon? But he could go up there and he could go in and they would embrace him. Now, what would people think? What would the black people think if they seen this happening? And some of them probably did, that he was getting this kind of treatment. That meant that the whole United States was a phony country when it came to blacks. And we see it all of the time now. It's still that way. And just like the horsemen that were beating the Haitians that came across the border, that should have never taken place there. They could have found another way to do that. But they thought they was doing their job to do that. But we hadn't seen that done. They haven't ever did that to a Mexican come across the border. We haven't seen that. Beating him with a whip and running into him with horses like that. The black race, I guess, is just the most hated race for some reason or another, which nobody has been able to figure it out. But Edgar Ray Killen was one of the biggest haters of the black race. Now, this is what he said about him being tried for the civil rights movement. The charge on me from 1964 aren't for killing civil rights workers. I'm charged for killing the enemy soldiers, Russian Jews collaborators who came to destroy my family, my home, my race, and my religion. For this reason, I am a political prisoner and am guilty of nothing. I am doing prison time for conviction of manslaughter of communist Jew soldiers who were registered communists. I am a true American. I am not afraid to stand up for what's right. I do not believe in the communist Jewish religion and politics. I am so blind as most of this generation. I am not so blind as most of this generation. I see America. Once world leaders are now shunned and looked down on. I see our young people lost in drug, crime, sex, and our prison and asylums are full. Corrupt politicians are daily news. Queers are in the charge of large parts of our society and government, and we're losing another civil war. Kids are parentless, medically uninsured, and we are told that Social Security is going broke. Now, he said this back in 2007, and I think I heard on the television that they said something about Social Security wouldn't be there and it was going to have to be adjusted or something like this. And this is what Edgar Ray was. Now, you can hate the man and you can say he was insane, and you probably would be right. But all insane people, they have their moments of clarity. Because a lot of the things he's saying about America and the United States would probably be on point. But then when he slipped back into the racism stuff, then that's when you know that, hey, he's a demon, just like everybody's saying he is. Now let me share something else that he said. He said that his stories about the FBI and the CIA and Senator Eastland and the mafia were true. I believe there must be records. This is Larry Ellis talking to him now to prove it. I believe that his claim was true about his dealing with Senator Eastland. Ray had actually been an underground agent for his best friend, the South's most prominent political leader, the man he followed and loved. Ray had on many occasions said that he was an agent, though an unknown one and an undercover one, and he took his instruction orders from Senator Eastland. Ray claimed with persistence of the senator sending him to Selma, Alabama, to the Pentagon to keep surveillance on Martin Luther King. You hear that? They were sending him to keep surveillance. That's what he said Eastland was doing to him, was sending him to keep. And they had surveillance on Martin Luther King at this time, but who would have thought they would send the Ku Klux Klan, king of the Ku Klux Klan, to do anything to Martin Luther King about this? Now, it's some really strong stuff that he said over here about people that was in Mississippi. This is one. This is just one he said. He said that he told Larry Ellis, you go spouting off about healing wounds and closing history's doors. That's what he said to Larry Ellis, had said something to him. There is so much that's hidden, it would fill 10 books. He's talking about the things that he and the Klan had done and other politicians and law enforcement had done. He said it would fill books. But I'll tell you this, you think Mr. Fancy Pants Jim Hood or Duncan tried to get the real answers or solve the civil rights murders, that's horse manure, son. They just wanted me for a high-profile conviction. Hood needed my conviction to get reelected by the niggers. He isn't solving none of Mississippi big crime because he's tied up in it all. Him, Barber, Lott, Scruggs, and all the big wheels. See, now he's hurting and angry because he's in the prison system now and nobody will help him. All of the people that he said that he had influence over and all the ones that was pulled to him, they won't help him now. He gave his lawyers, these two lawyers, $25,000. He had to sell some of his land, and baby doll had to sell some of her stuff, and they got $25,000 and gave it to a lawyer who was an alcoholic. You hear me? And they took the money and went out in Vegas with it and gambled and drank it up, and they didn't give Edgar Ray any support system, didn't do anything on his appeal and his trial, and wasn't anything he could do about it. And that's why he was so angry. He said this. He said, "You think they want the feds back here on this, huh? But Hood will get this, believe me, and Duncan too. They hurt baby doll, and I do not forgive that. I don't ever plan to. If the feds come, then all hell breaks loose for Senator Eastland and for my cousin. Congressman Arthur Winstead, Rainey, Price, and Willis would get thousands of years of the death penalty. Nobody ever knew it was a policy for them to call the boys when they arrested any niggers. If it was our local boys, our own local niggers, they get the boys beat their own butts good, unless they did something to a white person. That old jail had a cell called the blood room where they whipped them, just teaching them a lesson. They had a spigot, and that hose would reach the cell so they could just wash it out. Lots of northern niggas from all over thought they'd come to Philadelphia, or any of us in Neshoba County. They learned the hard way. Now, this jail is where they had Cheney and Goodman and Swerner, and this is what they used to do to black people in there for years and years. And the federal government, they did nothing about it, and they victimized people like this all over. Now, this is what he said also. I'm trying to read as much as I can, but y'all should get this book. He say, Ray, they kill people in jail? That's what Larry Ellis asked Edgar Ray. He said, not whites, but nigger lovers had big problems, especially if he was a local. The whole South, especially law enforcement, hated the Fed, but they weren't nothing really. Like I told you before, they just wanted confessions and snitches. Nobody ever checked out those niggas who come up missing at the jail. That turncoat Bowers killed that nigga in jail who was acting like a preacher, but had about 2 pounds of pot in his truck. When that happened, everybody knew to shut up. Bowers and his boys drugged that nigga's body all through Nigger Town, and one of the sheriff's cars escorted him. I told you I witnessed 11 killings. Bowers himself killed 5 in front of me. Can you understand what that is saying? They're saying that this is what Edgar Ray Killen saw and did, and saw Bowers kill 11 people, and he saw 5 of them right in front of him. And the Civil Rights Museum refused to put this book in their bookstore and refused to put Edgar Ray in their museum. And it's just astonishing why they won't do it. So evidently they're just putting phony stuff in there, and they don't want to offend anybody. But a museum is for the genuine truth. It's not put up there to appease people. It's put up in there to tell the truth. And here, this man, Edgar Ray Killen, who knows where all the bodies is buried, is sharing the truth about what these law enforcement was doing. They was not protecting the black people. They was killing them. They was murdering them. And they've got a tree down in some parts of Mississippi that extends over their highway. And they would get the niggas and put them in the back of the truck and put the noose around their neck, and they would drive the truck out from under them. He said he know where all the bodies is buried, and he know where that tree is. And this is what we need to be looking for, is so that these people of who these relatives are can get some closure. Every time you see on TV, these missing people, the little white girl that's come up missing, they wanted to find her so they could get closure. The black race is the same way. They want closure. But unless we can investigate what Edgar Ray Killen says about these murders and these people that committed these murders, then these people not going to have closure. These people whose people were lynched back during those times, those people, it's just like it happened yesterday to them. But the white race, they don't understand that. They think, oh, it happened back there. You should forget about that. But they don't forget about any of their people when they come up missing and dead. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. I know I might have read a lot to you, but this is how it had to take place. I had to share with you exactly what was being said. Now, Sage Bookstore down in Gulfport is going to be carrying the Killer Killing book in Gulfport. Sage, Coffee and Books. So if you're down that way, run by there, have a little coffee, and purchase one of my books down there. All three of them are down there. Now, if you would like to book a counseling session, please visit the organismchapter4.com. All of my books can be purchased on Amazon Books. Now, I know I probably bored you a lot of times, and maybe not. But that's all I got to share with you today, and I'm anxious to move on. Hello, neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counseling therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counseling therapist. I was born in Meridian, Mississippi, and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in 2021. I ran for governor of Mississippi in 2019. I'm Robert J. Ray, the man with all of the answers, every Monday at 4 p.m. Watch me on